Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a full-time climbing athlete, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Tomoe Narasaki Pros by Unparallel. So I want to say right off the bat with these Tomoe Narasaki Pros that these are absolutely some of my favorite shoes that I've ever climbed in, and I recently trusted them with my life for the full North American Cup season. And I had one of the best seasons of competing that I've ever had. I got some of my best results and also achieved a level of consistency that I've never had before. And I honestly don't think it was a coincidence that I was also trying a new pair of shoes for that comp season. While I would say that the Flagship Pros by Unparallel are my all-time favorite comp shoe right now, I would say that these are actually a better jack of all trades shoes. I'd say that overall, I like the Flagships more for toe hooking, for smearing, and they're on par with heel hooks, but the ability to effectively stand on small footholds with these things probably makes it so that if I had to choose only one shoe that I could ever climb in again, like climb in, train in, compete in, all of the above, I would actually choose the Tomoe Narasaki Pros over the Flagship Pros, even though I say that the Flagships are my favorite of all time. And that's simply because these Tomoe Narasaki Pros are what I would consider to be the best jack of all trades shoe of any shoe that I've ever tried. And the biggest reason that I would consider this to be such an all-rounder shoe is because of the fact that I consider the shoe definitely a soft, stiff hybrid. So it's very, very hard to make a climbing shoe that fits all climbing styles very well. And that's typically because a climbing shoe will either be intended to be a very soft shoe or a very stiff shoe. And it's difficult to have a middle of the ground shoe. This one does it really well though. So different from the Flagship Pros, we have just a single sole for the shoe. You can see it's not split. The sole goes all the way throughout the shoe. And oftentimes it's hard to have a shoe be able to smear quite well and effectively when you have a sole that's not split, because in theory it's harder for the shoe to bend. But I don't know how Unparallel does it, but they do a really good job at having the rubber be quite soft and bendable. And so I find that even though it's a single sole shoe, the rubber is so soft that I actually consider this to be one of my favorite smearing shoes. And I said this quite early on with the TN Pros as well, that I really like them for smearing. And I got a lot of comments in person from friends asking me like, hey, why do you like these shoes so much for smearing? It's not even a split sole, man. Like, you gotta get a split sole shoe if you wanna smear effectively. And I simply replied and said, yeah, the rubber's just so soft and sticky that I just really feel confident and solid in my smearing. And the shoe, you can see it's got like medium bend. It bends pretty well, but there's definitely a bit of resistance when I'm trying to bend the shoe simply like this. And that's just because it is soft enough to bend well, but it's also stiff enough as a result of this single sole that it makes standing on small footholds much more effective than a shoe with a split sole, such as the Flagship Pros. And even though I like to use the Flagships for the most part, I will never ever be able to ditch these shoes simply because they're always going to be able to stand on small footholds better than the Flagship Pros. And so especially if I'm in a scenario where I'm trying to do a slab climb and we're just standing on small footholds and not even using our hands, I definitely need to be using a shoe like this because it's very, very powerful with its toe. And in regards to the pointiness of this shoe, I would consider it to be on the same level of pointiness as the Flagship Pros. And I find that actually it's just as pointy, but the toe edge curves in a little bit more than the Flagship Pros. So I find myself often trying to step on small footholds with the inner edge of the shoe. And I often try to implement the twist on and sort of kind of wiggle my foot in place on a foothold technique when I'm approaching standing on small feet with these shoes. Whereas with something like the Flagship Pros, I just sort of stand on the very tip of my toe. But yeah, in terms of the pointiness, they function very similar to the Flagship Pros. And you can see actually here, I have some QuBits and we can compare the pointiness here. I find that the QuBits are not very a pointy toe shoe, and you can see that they protrude quite a bit less than the Flagships. And like I say a lot with this concept, I find that being pointy or not pointy in terms of the edge of a shoe is not necessarily a good or bad thing. The idea is that it's actually just more of a muscle memory thing. If you train your mind to be able to know how to properly and effectively weight footholds with a bit more of a gap in the rubber when it comes to whether a shoe is pointy or not, as long as you train your mind and put enough reps in, you can get used to it. And same goes with a not so pointy toe shoe. The difficulty is actually being able to transition from a not pointy toe shoe to pointy toe shoe like back to back or like very fast. I find I usually have to pick one style of shoe or the other. I will either do the majority of my training in a pointy toe shoe or vice versa. And right now I'm kind of going through a pointier toe shoe phase with the Tomoe Narasaki Pros and the Flagships. I also find that the rubber on these shoes is very, very sensitive. These were the first shoes by Unparallel that I tried, and I made the transition from wearing the Instinct VSRs, which aren't known as being very sensitive shoes, and immediately when I started wearing these, I was caught off guard by the sensitivity, and it was very much appreciated. I was able to feel what I was standing on very well, and this sort of helped me get better in tune with my own footwork ability. And the more that I could feel the footholds that I was standing on, the more I could learn about footwork and improve my own technique. So yeah, these shoes are really great for being quite sensitive, and you can definitely feel what you're standing on. The other thing I really like about the Tomoe Narasaki Pros is the fact that they have rubber all the way around the heel, as you can see. There is no gap in the rubber that we have on shoes like the Flagships. And what this does for me is it makes me feel confident that I can basically just take my heel and slap it on a hold. And I know that there's no bit of the heel that doesn't have less friction than any of the other parts. And I basically have to be less intentional about how I set my heel hooks, which can come in handy if I'm trying to rush through a sequence. Maybe I'm like pumping out and I just need to get my heel on to save it. In a situation where I have to be a bit more intentional and avoid the gap in rubber on my heel, maybe I'll like pump out in this scenario. So it's great to have a full rubber heel where you just get to slap it on, and you're gonna have good friction no matter how your heel actually lands on the hold that you're attempting to heel hook. So yeah, full rubber heel is great, and it's also, the rubber is still really sensitive on the heel and allows me to feel when I'm heel hooking really effectively. Another great factor about these shoes are the fact that they pass my 3-part breakage test. So similar to the Flagships, the shoes do not fail, they don't break in the heel, in the Velcro strap, or on the toe, the top of the toe peeling from toe hooks. So the rubber is constructed in such a nice way that the toe rubber will not peel no matter how much I abuse this thing. I have not been holding back. I have been toe hooking very sharp and aggressive toe hooks, and the rubber has not peeled at all, not even a little bit, which is absolutely great, because in other models of shoes that I've worn, Solutions, Futuras, VSRs, I often have to avoid heel hooking on certain boulders in training because I'm trying to preserve the toe for like an upcoming competition. And if I abuse it too much in training, it won't be in prime, pristine toe hooking condition for comp day, which can make for suboptimal training, and actually I think has stunted my toe hooking growth over the years because I avoided them so many times trying to preserve my shoes. So a very big important thing for me in a shoe is not having a shoe with toe rubber peelage. In my books, that's an absolute deal breaker. And if I have a shoe where the toe rubber is peeling, I can't wear that shoe. So far all the Unparallel shoes have been really great for not having the toe rubber peel, including these Tomoe Narasaki Pros. And then yeah, like the other couple tests are the Velcro strap, nice and thick. I have not experienced any rippage or breakage like I have with other models of different brands. And then also the fact that the heel is fully rubber means that there's no like gap in the rubber, like where the bit of felt material is usually on some other shoes, which allows for the rubber to kind of peel when you accidentally heel hook with that part of the shoes. So having it be fully rubber means that there's nothing to be necessarily broken on the heel, which is great. And again, what this means is that basically when this shoe reaches the end of its life, it's gonna be because you're getting a hole like where we stand on footholds, or maybe in the top area of your shoe from toe drag against the wall, which is how shoes are typically supposed to reach the end of their life, and we don't want them to fail in other key positions. And because I'm training full-time and climbing a lot, this is really, really important for me because I don't want to be trying to break in new shoes all the time because I have one that, you know, had the heel or the toe or the Velcro strap rip within a week, and now I don't have like a good comp ready shoe. So a nice durable shoe is something that is very important to me. And then yeah, because I considered this shoe to be a soft, stiff hybrid, that also means it has a medium break-in period and a medium average lifespan of a shoe. So this shoe probably took me about a week to a week and a half of training, like quite a lot, to be fully comp ready and broken in my opinion, which is pretty average in terms of shoes in my opinion. And then it's also averaging a medium length lifespan in terms of other shoes that I've worn. And it's not so soft that it will wear down super fast, but it's also not so stiff that it's gonna last you like a super, super long time. So yeah, average break-in period, average lifespan for the shoe. So yeah, to summarize the Tomoe Narasaki Pros by Unparallel, I would consider this to be the most jack-of-all-trades shoe, not only of all the Unparallel shoes I've tried, but of any shoe that I've tried ever. If I had to pick only one shoe that I could climb in for the rest of my career, it would be these at this current point in time. Definitely the best of all of the worlds in terms of my climbing needs, which is mostly comp stuff. I do board climbing and I'll go outside every once in a blue moon, but yeah, Tomoe Narasaki Pros, best all-rounder shoe in my opinion. And yeah, stay tuned for our reviews of other models.